Hello, everybody. This is Tim, and I have a certain someone on the other end of the line, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, mystery person?
Hello, everybody. This is Brady, 23 Penguins 32. I'm talking with Tim, Samwise 7 RPG today on Saturday.
So thank you for doing this. We've been trying to kind of coordinate our schedules a little bit to have this happen, so I'm glad we were able to finally do it.
Yeah, at last. It's easy. It's so easy these days to miss somebody timing wise too. So I'm glad you caught me this morning before I got busy on my delaying and procrastinating on the housework.
Yes, we'll continue to not do our housework for about a half hour here, and then we can actually go do the stuff that we're supposed to do. But the reason we're here today is to talk about incorporating art into RPGs, vividly describing things, and maybe even talking a little bit about maybe having some music or something playing on in the background. So I guess maybe just to start off, have you ever incorporated art into any sessions you've run?
I usually try to have at least one um, sort of piece of art and it could be the proper art, like I'm thinking something I've used in game more than once is Poussin's the Bergère d'Arcadie, the Shepherds of Arcadia, uh, because that was used. Was presented in the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, a book, as one of the hidden keys to the Holy Grail, whatever that is, to the location of the Holy Grail in France. So I've used that visually before, because visually it's just a great painting anyway. But I've also used, and I've used it for the subliminal clues in it as well as part of the game.
That's awesome.
But well, thanks. And it goes along with that bloodlines thing, and there's some sort of huge conspiracy to cover up a really perhaps dark secret or something information or a person that's been suppressed by the majority. But I like to use landscape and photographs, and it could be paintings also in my game, just to even try to draw the character players further into the setting itself. I think that's really useful, and I do it for characters as well.
I like what you were doing. What you said about the subliminal hints in images. I think I've heard one other person talk about that too, where maybe the characters or the players don't pick up on it right away, but if you keep showing them that image every once in a while, they might like, hey, wait a minute, why is this weird thing going off in the corner of this painting? Or maybe there's something more to this painting. Why does it keep showing us this image? Uh, so I see that being kind of a good idea, just picking some sort of art that might have some sort of theme or some sort of possible metaphor that's in the image itself. It sounds like that's what you've done with this image.
Yeah, and I've well put. And I've actually the image has been shown several times, the actual painting itself. But I've also got a landscape, just like Poussin did with the painting itself. You can go to France and actually see, and I've done this, see the perspective of that painting.
Oh wow!
And it matches. It matches perfectly. But in my game, I've got the landscape there, like in the south of France. But I've also got there's one location where the structures themselves, if you dissect the Shepherds of Arcadia, the painting itself, but substitute one-to-one buildings for the landscape from a certain perspective in that city, you see the painting itself instead of landscapes, trees, hills, rocks. You actually see buildings in their place. Oh. So I'm waiting to see. We haven't got to that part of the campaign because it's going to be, if they pick up on it, it's going to be an eye opener to the location of the secret I'm waiting to see if they actually pick up on it, or it's one of those things like this gentleman gamer was talking about last night on his Pathfinder update post, where you've got characters that completely miss something that should have been obvious to even a rookie. You know?
That's the kind of thing that I think might be the danger there with trying to incorporate art that has some sort of metaphor, is that they might not get it. Like, I know you've talked about your players and how they're very intelligent and they seem to just pick up on things like that. And I don't know, maybe the rest of us don't necessarily have groups like that, and you kind of have to hit them over the head every once in a while to actually get them to understand maybe where you're going. But I don't know.
Well, I think, to be fair, I think I've talked about them, their interests and how they like to play, and where they go, and they all appreciate the visuals and the vivid descriptions, and no one has complained that it goes on and on, the description, because the more they get, the more they know, type of thing. But I think, to be fair, everybody I've ever encountered, including at conventions, I mean, I can only think of a couple really just bad players that really didn't do it and play well, and that was more of a personality thing than intelligence, you know.
Okay.
So I think every gaming group is probably pretty good. It's just focus. It's different, like we were talking about before we started recording, the different focus. You said one of your players likes combat, you know.
Yeah.
I've got one of those too, but he also loves the mystery thing. But he's more excited in the game about having combat, which is why he plays a Minotaur Ranger. You know.
Yeah, that's a good archetype for someone who likes to have violence, but yet have other avenues to pursue. Yeah, I can see that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's other than the possibility of them missing something, I think there could also be ways that GM could incorporate hints and tips, maybe through repetition over a period of time. You could probably try to kind of like pull back the veil a little bit and, make things more understanding to them. And like, hey, well, I don't even know how you would tip that off maybe in game. Maybe you would have, what is actually in the image that you're using? It sounds like there's shepherds. Is that correct? Or not?
Yeah, there are 3 shepherds and 1 shepherdess, and those numbers are symbolic. And then the fact that you've got 1 female and 3 men is symbolic as well. You've got a tomb, a stone sarcophagus that they're standing before, and then that's the foreground. They're on a kind of a rocky escarpment with a few trees and shrubs. And then you've got a wooded, rolling background with the receding into a wooded ridge at the backside of the painting itself.
So you might even be able to reinforce that image by saying, okay, there's you're at a well and there's 3 men and one woman standing over there, or you're on a rocky rolling hillside and there's an old tomb up here. It might not be the one that's in the painting or the one that's actually important in the campaign, but just little things like that to reinforce that image. And like it might just be subliminal. They might not even realize it until maybe later on down the road, or I don't know.
Oh, exactly, and that's a great point. You've got to, if you're going to do something like this and expect the players to pick up on it, you have to repeat that to them, not ad nauseum. That's a pitfall. If you do it too many times, you're going to get them ignoring it as well. But if you actually portray it, because that's exactly, you picked up on it. That's exactly what I want to do. We're going to have they're going to encounter the three men and 1 woman standing before a altar in the exact poses at first, in the exact poses of the painting.
And I think you could vividly describe those poses. So, like we were talking about describing things in vivid detail, like maybe even before that session, you just really look at that painting and like, okay, how are they standing? Is the wind blowing from the northeast, or just things like that. And then when they come to that scene where they're in front of that altar or whatever, you could try to describe them in the same sort of gritty detail, vividly, the color of her hair, or the clothing that they're wearing, things like that.
Yeah, and 2 of them are, I'm not looking at it at the moment. 2 of them are pointing. one suggestively and one emphatically, and then you've got one that looks like it's speaking as well, and another one that's receiving the communication. It's yeah. There are ways to describe that. I think almost covertly through repetition, where eventually, as you said, you get the players in the mindset unconsciously, subliminally, in tune with your main objective. You know, the reason why you have this visual key in the game, where when they're actually finally presented with the real deal, they actually pick up on it and see it. And then that's, as you pointed out, that's the point where they then think back and think, oh my God, we've seen this over and over again.
That might be kind of if the image is that important, it might be a good idea to perhaps have that mounted on the wall behind you or tacked up with, pins, something that it's always in the room or in the area that you play in. That would be kind of interesting. I've actually used an image in my Darv's Hill game. It's like on the front page, and it's kind of Egyptian themed, and there's some sort of like lich, and there's like a dancing girl, and there's someone kind of pointing, and looks like he's yelling, and I really didn't tell the players what that image was about when they first started. It's like just a big dungeon crawl to them. It's just a big old massive mega dungeon in the middle of nowhere. And then I have this image with Egyptian mythology and symbols and what's going on with this girl at the bottom, and I just threw it out there. I didn't even really talk about it at all. And I was kind of curious to see how long it would take the players to ask about that image, because it's right there on the front page. It's like, here's a freaking image. I'm not going to tell you what this is about. And they started out like, what's up with that, man? I don't understand what that painting is, or what's up with that image. And as the campaign has been going on, they've been getting more history, and they've been learning about things. They have a name, Liqueur, that is kind of associated with that image, and they're like, oh, okay, so is that guy Liqueur over there? I'm like, well, you don't know. It's so it's kind of fun, like a carrot on a stick kind of thing, where I throw this image out there and just see if they bite, see if it piques their interest, and I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I guess I've kind of done the same thing as you've done with your image. I picked sort of an image, and I'm trying to base the campaign a little bit on that image, or use that image in the campaign.
And I really like that image that you've used. I've looked at that many times, and I have to admit the first few times was just, after the first few times, I then realized there's more in the photograph than the dancing girl who's kneeling.
Yeah, that's kind of like oh wow, this girl's got a nice ass right here.
Well,
and then it's like,
it took me. I had to look twice before I realized she was wearing anything, because it really looked like she was naked, which then suggests in the scene itself why, and then I finally got, well, she's probably either the dancer, as you said, or some sort of concubine, or like. Bad kings or people in power seem to attract the harem around them.
Yeah, I think I actually added that line of text after the image was up for a while. So that was kind of like, okay, I'm peeling back another layer here. I'm going to throw out some information, and it's a way to actually use the website too. It's like, because one of the players was like, oh, I saw you added some text to the bottom of that image the other day. I was like, yeah, I did. And I've been trying to just kind of give some information out a little bit at a time through the campaign, through interactions, through minor NPCs. Like that name Liqueur keeps popping up, and I think they figured out that he's some sort of undead person, but they really don't know why or what powers he has.
Nice, because as you described it at the beginning, you mentioned lich, and it's interesting to now hear you giving them piecemeal information over time through it, because I don't know if I'd look at it with no description and say, oh yeah, that's a lich. It would be things I'd learned through playing, or just simply looking at intently at the image for a long period of time. because there's a lot going on in that image that you use.
And I'm hoping to use some more of the themes in the actual image. This is actually, I didn't even actually plan to talk about the image at all. But this is kind of cool how it's working out here. Well, there is a lot of stuff in there, and there's a few other people that are in the frame, and you're thinking, well, who might that person be? And maybe, to be fully honest, I don't even know who that person is yet. But it's been kind of percolating on the back burner, like, okay, what kind of position does this guy have? What sort of power does he have? What sort of sway does he have with, all the underlings or whatever in the dungeon itself? And I don't know, it's really cool that the image is sort of the cornerstone of the whole campaign, and I'll go back to it every once in a while and just look at it and think, okay, what is it telling me today? What can I glean from this image today? So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, nice. And speaking of what you just said, the other people in that image, I didn't notice. I think, from my perspective, the two obvious figures are the person seated on the throne. Is it standing before the throne, or
I think the liqueur figure is sitting on the throne, and there's another person with his arm outstretched, sort of pointing, but it doesn't look like he's pointing at liqueur. He's not pointing at the girl either. So that's something I've been thinking about. Like, what's he pointing at?
Well, that now I'm drawing similarities between that image for the Darves Hill game and the Shepherds of Arcadia, because of the body language as well. You've got something. I don't know where you got that image, but you could use a lot in that image with the body language for clues in the game, for actual adventure hooks or something.
I just did a quick Google search. I don't even know where the image is from. So I don't know. Like, I'm not making any money off of it, so hopefully no one cares. But I just really like that image, and like you were saying, it almost has, like, through the body language, it sort of insinuates things. And I don't know. I'm an artist, or at least I used to be when I actually did that sort of thing. But I think I still am. But I'll notice things that I think maybe other people don't about images sometimes. Like you were saying, sometimes it won't hit you. I've looked at this image 100 times or whatever, and then that one time I watched it, like, what is that guy pointing at? And then you sort of wonder, maybe there's something on the wall, or maybe there's something behind the throne, or you don't know. So it has this nice sort of an enigma kind of quality to it, like, and you can fill that blank with whatever your imagination can come up with.
Yes, and I think the first time I saw the Shepherds of Arcadia painting, I was a kid, and obviously there's a different perspective there. But all I can say now is I think I thought it was a little odd, beautiful and a little odd, and then I've seen it in person as well. But it can, if anybody wants to know what I'm talking about with the Poussin image, you could actually look up. It has been dissected, reviewed for its esoteric symbolism, occult symbolism, and especially pertaining to the Holy Grail family, etc. So you can look that up online, and you can use that sort of stuff in your game, just like what Tim's talking about with his image for the Darves Hill campaign. Those type of visualizations when you're gaming or when you're creating a campaign or even one adventure or something, you could just run immediately when you, like Tim just said, when you get one idea, what's the guy pointing at, you could be writing a whole adventure around, and more, around just that one little thing, one little cue or clue in the painting itself, that you might have missed every other time you looked at it.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about art. I guess to kind of change gears, you were talking about the landscape sort of pictures, and I haven't really used them much in face-to-face campaigns, but I've used them a lot in play-by-post campaigns where you can actually just link to an image or bring an image in, or have some sort of picture actually in the forum itself. And I found that those games, they really seem to appreciate it. It's like, if they're climbing up some rocky pass, I mean, it's not that hard to just type into Google rocky pass, and then you just look through the images and like, oh, that's awesome. That's perfect. And I think if you had like a good color printer, you really could just throw that image out on the table. Like, okay, you guys are crawling up here. You see that big rock right there, and it definitely has that an image is worth 1,000 words kind of thing, I think. And I don't know.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And I don't use them all the time for every situation, nor do you. But that one event, that one setting, I guess, in your story, in your session, can really draw them in so that when you get past your rocky pass, they're still visualizing what you're describing, even though you've moved into a different, let's say, your rocky pass leads up to a plateau. They're visualizing the plateau just as they looked at the visualization of the rocky pass. They're still well into it.
So it's kind of like a good jumping point off for their imagination, sort of like, okay, here's what it kind of looks like, and then I think as you describe things, it sort of influences the mind's eye picture that they start to generate. Like I said, I haven't done it as much as this is one of the things that I want to try to do more of, is incorporate art, landscapes. I don't tend to like to use monster images, just for the fact that people sort of memorize monster books and they're like, oh, well, that's this, and then your description is just totally out the window. So I don't really do that with monster art. I've seen people do that to good effect, where they'll just go online and steal some sort of different image, or their monsters are different than the monster books anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Most, if not all, of the so-called monsters that in my game are not exactly like you would see read statistically or descriptively in the monster manual or bestiary or whatever you're looking at. So for example, when I pull when a goblin is in my game, I'll actually one time maybe show them the folkloric or mythological goblin from North and Western Europe, to show them that if they're in the mindset of, oh, he said goblin, it's in the monster manual this way, they're going to be totally off. Which that can be fun too, because obviously then they're going to learn what a goblin is in my game. But it's if I show them that the goblin character that comes in the night, like Rob Fremantle and I were talking about the other day, comes in the night to steal your breath or affect your dream in a negative way, because then they're going to feed off the negative energy created by your nightmare. Then they kind of get what that goblin is about. It's not got a curved, nicked, rusty blade beside it, and it's wearing, some badly mismatched set of armor. It's the literal goblin from, medieval England, for example.
And you were talking about taking that old goblin image. You could probably find some old wood carvings or something that have been scanned online, and you could find an image of that, and just the idea. Okay, so you have the image of this goblin from the monster manual, and that has a sort of reference to people's mind. They see that image and they think that. Whereas the image you would show them of this different goblin wouldn't have those same associations, I think. So you could actually, by doing and using a different image like that, you can color those associations they have with that image, because they've never seen it before. It's the first time they've probably ever seen that image. So I think that would lend itself to them kind of associating what goblins are in your game with the way you describe them. So it's like a new experience for them. It's a new image,
Right, and I've found with using visualizations, everybody's got a bit of prejudice, a preconception in their mind of what something is, even if you're talking about a landscape or a building or a city and the way it looks. But if you can actually show them, one part of something, then you can see sometimes their eyes open, the light goes on and it's like, oh, that's what he's talking about. Even though your descriptions, and I'm told mine are very good, that visualization is the key that pushes them over out of their preconceptions into the actual conceptual bit that you're describing, and the immersion level goes up even further after seeing it.
Yeah, I think with the combined use of images and just describing the details of things, the color of someone's hair or the way, just I think Ander talked a lot about using the five senses, and maybe you have other senses as well. You just feel weird, or you're creepy, or the hair on the back of your neck stands up. Just I think with using all of these different tools, like their eyesight, you can be loud at the table. Like maybe you're not a very loud person, but some descriptions you give are loud for this character is kind of a loud character, so I'm just going to be loud, or this thing is kind of ugly, so I'm going to try to change my voice in a way that sort of emphasizes how ugly they are. There's a lot of different ways you could take that, I think. I don't know.
And even talking about the five senses, and I'm glad you said even more senses too, because that is key, and I think that's something that sometimes gets missed with, like Rob Bland, Humanoid, and I are talking about horror in games. The other senses, what we call the sixth sense or extrasensory perception, or however you want to put that, you want to use these things not in just your key, something you want to point out to the players, because then every time you start describing a non-player character, for example, in detail, they then know it's important.
Yeah.
The most important thing. Whereas if you're describing, I don't mean describe every single person in a town, that's not immediately around them, but just make a little, like this guy's walking with a limp, and he's got a cane he's leaning on. Another person might be wearing clothes that look well out of date. Or and another person's got a really floppy hat on, and etc. This person's heels are clicking much louder on the paving stones than anyone else's. Just little things like that, where you're not just describing the person that you want the party or the player characters to interact with.
Sometimes I'll actually give more information away than they might not be able to ascertain from those senses, like. I'll say something like this, like that old man you were talking about, It's like, well, you're not really sure why, but you just get the feeling that life isn't going well for him for whatever reason. And just try to sort of influence what just they might not know, but somehow they do. I like to throw that out every once in a while. And sometimes my players be like, well, how do I know that? It's like, you just don't. It just comes to you, It's not really, like you were saying, it's not really anything about the hat or the cane or even the person's facial thing. It's just something that they feel.
Exactly. And you commented on my my last post, the how do you create NPC, the looking at a photograph and then being able to imagine things about that person that you're looking at through simply looking at their face, their body posture when the photograph was taken.
Yeah, I haven't really done that in a lot of games, but for some reason when I'm running a Firefly game, I think it's probably because it's all people. I'll try to go find images online and just, okay, this is going to be the smuggler guy that they're going to meet, 3 sessions from now or whatever. And I'll just look at it every once in a while. Yeah, that guy's a bastard. Just look at him. He just looks like a slimy bastard who's going to stab you in the back and take all your credits, And but I in those kind of games too, I'm like, okay, players, pick some sort of image somewhere that's somebody's face or whatever that sort of encapsulates what your character is. And whenever I've done that, the players have been kind of excited. They've gone and searched on Google Images or whatever, and just looked around people's faces. You just type it in and see what happens. Or famous actors or something. They have a little bit of baggage, the famous actors, so I tend to ask them to find someone's face that isn't an actor. But at the same time, it's like some people really like that idea, and then I'm cool with it. It's like, if you're that excited, you can be John Cusack in Firefly. That's awesome. Whatever.
Oh, well, that would be awesome. No, that's one of my favorite actors, so that's that cool. Would be a good example. Yeah, I've used. I saw a photograph probably a year ago or something like that of John Boehner, who's now in the United States Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my goodness, looking at him. And now I have to admit, I'm not a Republican, nor would I vote for him. I say that not to be political, but just to what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I've now used him as the slimy elvish politician.
Yeah, I guess depending on whatever political viewpoints your players have, that could have a good or I guess positive or negative. I don't know. You have to know your players, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm not going to use a visualization of John Boehner himself because the Elvish politician in the game is not orange, but yeah, lay off the carrots, John. Come on. But I'm certainly that's what example of what looking at reading a news article with his photograph in, and I just looked, and that was my first thought. It had nothing to do with his politics or his or the article itself or the fact he's a politician. It just my first thought was, oh, he looks really slimy. There's something going on behind the eyes. And to be fair to him, that was my first reaction to it. He might be the best guy ever if I met him in person. Who knows? Yeah. But that was what I thought immediately. And imaginatively, I just ran with it to for me to have this visualization of an NPC in the game that I had not really visualized that much up to the point because they've not been encountered yet.
With the way I like to prep games too, I've noticed that I might not have a bunch of stats for this guy, but if I have an image and a name and maybe even just a couple lines or a couple words of personality, that's enough for me to just take that character and I don't know if this happens with you, but sometimes NPCs just kind of take over. Like my body language changes, and I think this is how this guy thinks. This is not how I would do it in my normal everyday life, but this is how I'm going to roleplay this guy to the hilt. And when that happens, it's really awesome. So.
Yeah, and I realized I was taking from a film. We've been talking a lot about just still images, but from a film, I realized I was playing the Goblin King in my campaign world a lot like this is before. And then I saw the Pirates of the Caribbean, and I thought, Depp is doing that so well, and I was doing it like I'm not an actor, nor am I on the level of another one of my favorite actors on the level of Johnny Depp, but yeah. That's the Goblin King to a certain extent in my game, and it drew me much more into the films than I would have been anyway. Though I'm a sucker for sailing and anything to do with the water, so. Yeah, I would have watched him anyway if it even had been somebody else replayed it differently. But yeah, films can also visualizations can strike you that way. And though I wouldn't play a film in front of people at a table, but that players can pick up on that type of thing while you're playing without any kind of cue other than your role playing the character themselves.
Okay, well, it looks like we're actually over half an hour a little bit. Is there any sort of closing remarks or whatever that you want to leave about arts, describing things, really anything?
Well, I think it's just another dimension in the game. I've heard some people don't like doing it at all, which is fine, but you just have to know yourself and know your group that you're playing with. And if it would add, if it would add anything to your gaming experience, certainly do it. I've found that it always adds something. And I know we didn't get to music, but I will play music in the background, not just for key things, but just for atmosphere from time to time, and it works really well, and you see the results at your table.
Yeah, I think, like you were saying, these are all just optional tools that you can use as a GM. You just, whatever you think your group would respond to, and feel free to experiment a little bit. Maybe you've never used art before. Maybe you've never turned on, songs in the background at a low volume, or even loud volume if maybe you're playing in some World of Darkness game and it's like a club or something.
Yeah, I'll definitely, and I'll say this embarrassingly because it'd be a good way to end. I've even played a game of soccer and then took those dirty socks in a sealed bag to a game, hid them, and when you're going down into a dungeon in this particular room that's just rank, I pulled the socks out, and everybody really got the point that they didn't want to be in that room.
Wow, dirty socks. I think that's a good way to end the video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to everyone later.